with the floor all cleaned up, I threw in the carpet. I vacuumed the carpet really good, but it needs a good shampooing to really clean it up. But I got all the glass out of it at least. So now, before I throw the seat in, I went to put it in and realized, well, it'd be a lot easier to put the console in first. Before I could put this console in, it needs some work. One of the things I found as I was putting the headliner in, nothing in the upper console worked. And when I turned the radio on, it kicked the circuit breaker in the amplifier. So I knew there was some wiring, major wiring issues, and I suspected it was probably moisture. The roof, being completely open, was covered with plastic, but it leaked. And it leaked all over the console, on both the upper console and the lower console. So I started tracking the wires, and inside this console, there's a USB plug here. You can see inside that it is clear full of rust. And if we look inside the console and the base, you can see more rust. So in a sense, you could call this a flood car, even though it wasn't really flooded. But it got moisture all over from that open roof. So I don't know if this thing's going to be any good. The CD player, there's a little bit of rust inside of those. Don't see a lot of rust issues or moisture issues down here on the bottom, but also the stitching is coming out. So whoever was driving this, that was probably where they put their elbow and wore through. Shame on Ram that it was able to wear through that quickly. It's only not even a year old, but it happens, I guess. So I've got another pad for the top of the console I need to replace. I need to really clean it up good. I need to check all these rusty connections. About the only thing I can do that I can think of is to clean them up with WD-40. There's not a whole lot more that I can think of. I'm noticing this switch is smashed in. I'm gonna have to tear that apart and find out why that's broken. This truck was abused. Whoever owned this just really did not take care of it. One of the switches on the ceiling for the lights was busted and was just shoved up through the headliner. So what I'm going to attempt to do is I'm going to spray a little bit of simple green into this USB port, and once I get it just a little bit squirt in there, I'm just going to work a USB cable in and out of it, clean it up as much as possible. I'll also take a toothbrush clean it up as much as I can. Now I'll rinse it good. Just a little shot of WD-40 in there. That'll clean up the moisture. USB a little shot. Now it's just a matter of getting everything in and testing it. I'll do the same thing to these other two USBs. And I need to clean this up. That's about all I can do electronics wise. I was going to get the one that belongs on here that came with the truck. This is $100 more. and I don't know if I really like that on there anyways. So I opted for the less expensive one, and it's just smooth and it doesn't have the big ram's head on it. Well, that was pretty simple. All that was a missing screw. Just put a screw back in there and put it back together. I hear a lot of glass. I'm going to have to tip it upside down and shake it. Glass rattling around all over inside. This has got to be one of the easiest consoles I've ever had to install. Couple of quick clips. Line up the vent. Line up the pins. Got a bolt that goes into the dash. And two that goes into the side. There's a little plastic cover here, here, and here. Now that I have the console in, I've got the seats in, I'm able to take it for a little test drive around the neighborhood and check to make sure everything works. And that panel quit on me. So the sunroof features and the back window switch, those work. But these top switches and the lights, they don't work. While I was out testing things, I got an error code on the dash that said the cruise does not work, and so I spritzed a little water on the windshield, and the rain sensor does not work. The headlights have an auto dimming feature. I was able to test that, and it does work. So inside of this panel, I'm getting some other errors. So my thought process was, well, whatever is going wrong in here most likely is linked to there. But when I pulled up the wiring schematics, they are all separate. So this piece, I checked all the wiring again, and everything looks great. So I just had my fingers crossed, hoping that maybe with everything that I was doing playing around in here, that I blew a fuse. And sure enough, underneath the steering wheel there's a panel. You take that panel off. There is the fuses, and there was a burned out fuse. So I went through and pulled every single fuse one at a time, checked it, and it was only the one fuse. Once I got that fuse in, this all works. So now, when I open and close the door, now you can see the lights work, the SOS, and the assist has little red indicators. Oh, there they go. The red indicators show that those are working. The tailgate works. The lights on and off work. You can see the little symbol there. The door light on and off symbol works. You can see they just faded off. So all those features are now working properly. I was getting an overload error on the stereo system from the amplifier. So the amplifier was giving me a code that the speakers were overloading. I was getting feedback, probably a power. So whatever power jumped and blew that fuse was somehow linked to all of the stereo system. And I suspect it was probably the speakers there in the back, because that is all part of that same wire harness. So now that I've replaced the fuse, I tested the stereo system and everything works perfectly with that system. But I'm still not getting cruise control or rain sensor. So when I looked at this wire harness, it actually runs down this side of the roof, down this A-pillar and into this side panel. So I suspect that maybe I have the same rust issue in this connection. I'm hoping that's what it is. I'm hoping I can just clean that up. Even if I have to replace this wire harness and nothing is damaged in that panel, that wire harness is 25-30 bucks. So that's no big deal. It's a bear to have to pull all this out again to get to it. But the sensor, the radar sensor that's in that box, is $2,000 retail and is $1,500 wholesale. I was able to find one online for around $500 that's used. So that is a very expensive piece to have to replace. So I'm hoping that's not damaged. So I'm going to take this side panel off. I'm hoping there's a connector right there and I can inspect it. Yep, well there's the wire harness. There's the connection. And there's rust. Yeah, this connector also got full of water. These pins are pretty rusty. I can see some green from the copper that's corroded. Can't really get down into those receptacles. So I'm hoping if I just work it on and off of the plugs, then I'll be able to get a connection. So I'm just going to hold the locking mechanism in and just work it in and out. And hopefully the friction will clean those areas with that WD-40. Getting a little bit of rust residue off. Well, let's test it out. I'll grab the key fob, and we'll see if that indicator light goes off. Now's the true test. I'm not sure if this is going to start now. I still have that bottom panel disconnected and there's a few things that were connected to it. Looks like maybe a sensor or something. So push the button and see. times and turn it on, turn it off, take it for a drive. A lot of times they'll clear themselves. I'll play around with it some more and try it out. Well, that didn't work. Turned it on and off several times. Drove about a mile, start and stop. When I push the cruise set, the indicator on the dash goes out. It acts like it's going to work, but then that error code pops back up again. So I'm going to take the cover off of this. It's a bear. Every time I take it off, I've taken it off twice now, I feel like I'm going to break something. But I need to check it one last time before I end up taking it to the dealer. I called the dealer, $130 just to hook up the diagnostic pad, which is crazy. $100 to $130 per hour for electrical problems. They wanted to schedule it for 2 days. If they milked it out for 2 days at $100 an hour, yeah. And I'm sure they would try to force me into replacing that radar control, which is $1,500 wholesale. I doubt I could get it wholesale. I could order it online and get a wholesale, but if I buy it through them with the service, I'm going to be paying $2,000. We're looking at $4,000 or $5,000 at the dealership. So anything I can do to avoid that. Don't want to pry against the windshield to get this off. So you have to just kind of get your fingers under the edge. First time I took it off, I knocked the rear view mirror off the bracket, and that was really hard to figure out how to get back on. Didn't break it. One of these times I will. I don't want to have to take it off anymore. The female end looks clean. So this one is the rain sensor, and then this is the radar camera. It doesn't look like anything here has gotten wet. So when the water was getting into this panel and it was running across the headliner, just enough of a channel there, it was running down off of both sides of the dash, and that's what got those wire harnesses wet. But it doesn't appear as though anything inside of these pieces have gotten wet. All the pins in the radar camera are straight and they're clean, so that looks good. I know this connection to the rear view mirror is good because that one works. There is a sensor in the back of the rear view mirror as well as this sensor. One of those is probably the auto dimming feature for the headlights or for the rear view mirror, because it is also auto dimming. That sensor typically is from the rear. Like I say, I don't see any water damage, I don't see any moisture, any droplets, no indication at all that anything in here got wet. I'll talk over myself here for a few seconds because I just had a great idea after I recorded this little clip. If I unplug this camera sensor, it also checks lane changes and forward collision warning. So when I unplugged that, I got those error codes on the dash. I plugged it back in and those codes went away. So I know this camera is working. So the cruise control is definitely something else. Now that all the console is in, and try all the USB ports. I tried the one in here and it does not work. I tried the ones here on the front and plugged in a little pod into the auxiliary port, I'm getting an anti-theft code. Okay, what is that all about? That's a first. Something to do with the key fob. Once I started it, everything's fine. Let's try it on auxiliary. Okay. Let's do media. Try the pod. There it goes. That's good. I know my auxiliary and my USBs, everything work except the one in the console. I've got a book on CD. We'll try the CD player. Didn't want to take it first, but it just slid in. But it doesn't look like it wants to play. Well, looks like another piece of electronics bites the dust with the moisture. Yeah, it's disappointing. So if I want to replace this, which I know you can, I've seen them used, I'll have to pull the console back out and slide in another one. Another wiring issue, maybe. Try another disc just because. I won't even take it. I did try out the charging pad, and it does work. Well, that's enough of the electronics for now. Thank you for watching this episode of Ride Rescue. I really appreciate you tuning in. I'm getting really close to having my monetization numbers for views and hours of watching. I'm coming up short on my subscribers, so please subscribe. It really helps me keep my channel moving forward, and I'm able to continue creating more content. Leave me a comment. Really appreciate hearing from you. Thanks again for watching. Goodbye for now.